Hello everybody, my name is Landon, and in this video I'll be walking you through my headshot editing routine, as well as showing you some of the basic gear that I use to get the best results in my portrait photography. This video is intended for beginners, but if you are new to editing in Adobe Lightroom or Photoshop, you may learn a few tips or tricks. Please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, it really makes a difference. And Hinh Studios is coming out with a new short film soon, so make sure to hit that bell notification so you can get notified right when it drops. And with that out the way, let's get right into the video. What is the key to getting the best professional headshots? Lighting. Speaking of key, the lights that I use for my key is a Neewer Vision 4 strobe light with a 32-inch softbox. This is a strobe, which means it only does bursts of light, so this is not meant for video making. It has a nice big battery that lasts all day, and the build quality is very nice. I also use Neewer 660 Pros for general use. These LED panels are highly versatile, fully RGB, and battery powered or AC powered. These are what I use for rim lights, hair lights, accents, what have you. Though these are on the cheaper end of lighting equipment, they will still run you a few $100s. If you're just starting, you may not be that committed yet, you may have just bought a camera, but don't worry, there are many solutions to getting nice soft light if you're creative. Even a cheap shower curtain can do. For my camera, I'm using a Canon T8i with a Sigma 50mm prime lens. I won't do a whole review here, but in short, these are great starters for portrait photography. I highly recommend them for beginners on a budget. And after you get your lighting right, after you get your photo imported into Lightroom, it's time to start editing. Alright, so I got this example photo here, and you might be saying to yourself, hey, I mean, it looks pretty good, you know? Well, this is the before, and this is the after. Much better, right? Let's see how to get there. First, we're gonna start off with exposure. You wanna make sure your photo's perfectly exposed. I like to make it as bright as you possibly can without clipping. As you can see, this is way too bright. You wanna bring it down. I wanna bring it just a little smidge higher than it is right now. Okay, that looks nice. Contrast, I don't think I want to change that right now. Like maybe a smidge less for these professional corporate photos. You want not very much contrast. You don't want harsh shadows, harsh lines. That's what we want to avoid here. Next, highlights. We want to maybe bring down highlights on the face just a little bit. Shadows, I want to bring up the shadows just a little bit. I'm just gonna do it like 20. So before, after, brighten it up a little. Now, texture and clarity. Right before we touch these, we're gonna go to the spot removal tool, and we're gonna clean up any skin blemishes, stray hairs, maybe even wrinkles every once in a while. So I'm gonna go and I'm going to manually just click on every single one of these. You can click and drag to do a line of it to do more space, and just go around, click every part. If it doesn't work, just Control Z. You can use your scroll wheel to increase and decrease the size. And I'm just gonna do a time lapse of me going through all of them. And I think we got all of them done. I got all of the little spots that I wanted to get, all the stray hairs. Of course, I could go in a little longer, but I think that's good for now. Just press done. And to look before and after, you just press the backslash key. Before, after, before, after. Next, color temperature. If your camera didn't automatically do the color temperature very good, just slide what it was at automatically was just perfect. And the tint, I like to change just a slight bit towards magenta. This is a raw photo, so shooting in RAW gives you a lot of benefits. It gives you a higher dynamic range, which means you have better shadows and highlights to work with and better color depth. Next, we want to go to texture. I like to turn down texture a little bit, so all of that skin detail, all of the little pores and stuff, we don't really want to see all that when the texture is up, so we want to turn it down a bit, not all the way. 45 is good. And then clarity, you want to turn down a little bit, -10. You don't want to go overboard with clarity, otherwise it'll look too edited. Dehaze, you don't want to touch dehaze. That'll be for photos that are outside, like landscape photos. Vibrance and saturation, I just bump up vibrance just a little bit for the skin tone. We don't need to touch tone and curve right now since we've already done all of the exposure and the highlights, so you could skip that. HSL/color, I like to switch to the color, and there's the yellows and the oranges, which are the skin tones, and if you need to, you can change the hue to be a little more closer to what you want, the saturation and the luminance to make it brighter. I think it's good for now. Next, the color grading. It's a very useful tool for other photos, but in professional portraits, we won't be using it too much other than just making the shadows a slight bit towards the blue. If you go all the way, you see that's very blue. It's a bit too much. I like to make it like sort of a teal, and then just click on the little knob and you can go back and forth to adjust the intensity of it. I like to do just a little bit, see, about 15 saturation there, and maybe just turn up the midtones just a little bit. And the blending, which is basically like the color temperature. It slightly changes the color temperature, both blending and balance. And sharpening, it comes pre-made with a little bit of sharpening when you have a raw photo. I like to keep the detail down, so if you see detail up, it adds sort of this noise to the photo, which I don't like. So I like to turn detail all the way down. And radius you may want to adjust depending on the photo, how far away it is from the subject. 1 is like best for most cases. We don't need sharpening all the way up for this. We could turn it down to 60, 70. It's not too much of an effect when you have the detail low. And masking, when you press Alt, you can see the areas of which are being affected by the sharpening the most. So you could turn it down to where only the most contrast edges are being sharpened. I like to turn this to about like 60 or so. So you're only getting like the important parts, you're not sharpening the flat skin. Then noise reduction. I'm shooting at 100 ISO here. If you're shooting at a higher ISO, then you're gonna have more noise. You wanna turn up that noise reduction. But for here, there's virtually no noise here. Neither is there color noise. Just keep it at where it is. If it's too bad, then you want to turn it up a bit. The lens corrections, very useful for defringing. You zoom in to some of the edge areas where a highlight meets a sharp edge, you might see fringing. See how this is slightly blue? We don't want that, so we're gonna use the green hue, which has more blue on it. Gonna expand the color range and turn it up a bit until the blue is completely gone. And if you have any purplish reddish fringing, you could do that as well. Vignetting, you don't want to change vignetting on the lens corrections. You change it on the effects instead. Transform, when you're using a 50mm like I was, you don't really need to do any sort of transformative effects unless you're using a really wide angle lens, which you shouldn't be using for portrait photography anyways. Vignetting, you don't really need to do a vignette for professional corporate photos like this. Calibration. Calibration is the secret sauce that I use. It's sort of like color grading, but it affects the whole photo and all of its colors. The shadows, I like to turn the shadows a little bit more towards the magenta side. If your photo's really green, you're gonna wanna turn it up a lot more. And we have the red, green, and blue primaries. These, you shift the hue a bit. You don't wanna do it very much, but you could do it a little in each direction. Just play around with it really to see the best results. I like to do red sort of in the middle where it was. Green, I like to turn more towards the blue side just a little bit. And the blue, I like to turn more towards the teal side just a little bit. And then from there, you can adjust the saturation. And you see it really makes the skin color pop when you increase the saturation of this blue here. Don't want to go too overboard with it, but just mess around with it to see what is best for you. And I think this looks pretty nice. And we're gonna bring this into Photoshop now. So you just right click on the little image here and export. It'll bring up a window where you can switch to a different folder. Same folder as the original photo for me here. You could put it in a subfolder if you want. I don't need to do any of that. Add a custom name. You don't need to do that here, but if you have lots of photos, it's a very useful tool. File settings. This is going to be one of the most important parts of this export window. I like to keep my photos when they're exported as JPEGs. sRGB is the most common color space to use, so just keep it there. Don't touch that. And quality, I like to keep about 95%. You want to keep it pretty high. And unless you want to make lower quality photos for like proofs and such, then you would limit the file size, but we don't want to do that here. If you want to change the image size, this is where you would do it. Keep the resolution at 72 pixels per inch. You don't want to add any extra sharpening or anything like this, so export. After a few seconds after the photo exports, I'm gonna open up Photoshop, File, Open, and just go to the photo, and here it is. What I like to do in Photoshop is number 1, remove facial shine, number 2, whiten the teeth, and number 3, hair removal, number 4, background removal and replacement. That's what we're going to be doing here, starting with the facial shine reduction. You're going to make a new layer right here with the plus sign. Go over to your brush tool, or you could just press B on your keyboard, and you press Alt to bring up your color picker. You want to bring somewhere nearby the highlights of the shine on the face. For all photos, you won't need to do this, but in this case, I think I want to remove some of this shine here, and I think it'll make the photo look better. So just select an area nearby the highlight of the shine, bring the opacity down to about 20% or so, and just slightly brush in on the areas, making sure to select the color with Alt each time. To change the size, you can use the settings up here, or you could press Alt, right click, and here you could change the brush size. So I'm going to change it down to be a little smaller here. And then over here. And down here. And if you feel that that's not enough, you could click it again. Go over it one more time. Alright, but that's not it. You make another layer. Set opacity to 100% and just do the same exact thing. It's gonna look a little more rough, but that is okay for now. Be a little more rudimentary with it, and then go right here where it says normal. These are the different blend modes. You want to bring it down to color, and as you can see, it's looking better already. I don't want to keep this at 100% opacity. I want to bring this down maybe 50%. You can see before and after. It's a subtle effect, but what it does is it makes the highlight color more like the skin color to look like it's removing the shine. If that looks like too much, you could bring down the opacity. And here's what the facial shine reduction looks like before and after. Before, after. Next will be the teeth whitening. So what you do here is select the original image, go down to this circle here, which is the different filters, and go to hue saturation. To zoom in, use Alt and the scroll wheel. Go to the little hand icon and just pick the yellow-ish part of the teeth. Then turn up the saturation and hue all the way up. It's gonna look a little strange, but if you click on this area here, you can change the part that is affected. You want to go to where the teeth become blue like this, and everywhere else around it is sort of a green. And you can change the color area which it's affecting. So you want to move it, mess around with it to where the teeth are blue and everywhere around it isn't, like this. It doesn't matter if the whole face is affected because we're going to be masking that out. You just want the teeth selected and the lips not selected. From here you could bring it down back to where it was. And here is where you're going to be changing the teeth color. You turn the saturation down. You don't want to go too much because it looks unnatural. I like to go about 30, anywhere from 10 to maybe at worst 40. I think here about 20 to 30 is good. And then the hue you can turn down just a little bit to make it a little more reddish. Maybe turn that just -4. And then the lightness, you don't want to go overboard with this one either. Maybe just 20 to 5 higher. And if you zoom out, you might see the face is a little sickly looking. You want to press Control I while selecting the mask to invert it. It'll turn it off. But then go to your brush, make sure it's all the way white, and bring it down and just brush over the teeth. And here, now you have affected only the teeth for the whitening, and all the rest of the face and everything is back to how it was. Zoom in, you can see the difference of the teeth being whitened. Then I would do the hair removal. You want to make a new layer to put this brush on and just go and brush all the hairs away. If it's nice and plain like this, select an open area and you just brush away these little hairs very easily. After that, you'd basically be done. As you can see, I have a little bit of distracting lines down here that I didn't intend on being in the photo. If I want, I could just brush that away as well. But let's say I don't really want this sort of gray background. I want it to be pure white. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna unlock the photo here so I can select the quick selection tool and just select the subject, go around each part that needs selecting, and if it's selected a part that you don't want, you just press Alt and you can deselect it. Press Select and Mask. This will give you more refined options for your selection here. I like to turn up the smoothing just a little tiny bit. The feather, you want to turn up a lot. so that it's not so obvious that it's a selection. And the shift edge you want to turn up so that you're not cutting any part of your subject off. You may need to mess around with the settings to get it just right. I think I had the feather a little too high, so I'm going to decrease it. And this is what it's going to look like once it's done, because I put the view on white. This is good for when I'm going to change the background to is white, and make sure the opacity is all the way up so you can see that it's pure white. Here we go. Just press OK and you'll have this selection. Just press the mask button, which is this rectangle with a circle in it, and then your subject will be selected on this mask here, and you can go to the semicircle again and press on solid color and go pure white. Make sure to drag it under your photo. So here you go. You have now a white background. If some of the hair, you could see where the white is and where the gray background used to be, you could select the photo, and you want to go to the dodge tool, which if it's not here, then right click it and you'll see the dodge tool. And you want to turn the exposure not above 50%. I keep it below 50%. And then you just color in the areas which need it, and you'll see that it brightens that area, which is what the tool does. So if you brighten the edges, it'll match the white background a little better. If you have a few errors in your selection, you click on the mask, go to your brush, make it white, and you could just go and brush in the mask again. See how that edge is a lot better now. Do that here, and it reveals what you had masked. Just go around. If you do too much, just go back to black and that'll hide. White to reveal, black to hide. And we can go back to this problem spot, and I can go over with black some more so you can't see that there was anything there. And finally, I could crop it. I'm going to keep it at the original ratio because I like that ratio, and then I'm going to just go right about here and select. So here we go. Here's our final image. We can file, export, export as. I'm going to keep it as a JPEG. Quality 95%, or you could do 100. It doesn't really matter. Scale, I'm going to keep that the same and export. Before, after. There you go. There is my full walkthrough on what I do to edit my headshots for professional corporate photos. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe once again, and I'll see you next time.